Hey, what's up guys? So I wanted to make this short video on the quick selection tool, specifically the refine edge tool. This is something that comes up a lot when people are doing selections of hair, and I just wanted to show you how I use this for complex selections. All right, so this is the image I'm going to use. I chose this image because there's a really complex hair selection. There's a lot of little strands sticking out and there's a lot of little gaps in between the hairs. Also, the sweater she's wearing is kind of fuzzy and has a softer edge. This is an image from Adobe stock. You can see the number in the top right. It's 261521894. You can use this, but I've licensed this image, so it's full resolution. You should be able to find something on Google Images if you want to practice that's very similar, or you can use this image on Adobe stock as well. So first off, what I like to do is the quick selection tool. You can do that by pressing W. And typically what I do is click select and mask at the top here. And you can see it masks the whole thing. It has this kind of red overlay and you can change how it looks. If you go up to the top right, you'll see view mode. I have it on overlay, which kind of gives it this red tint. After this, I just click select subject. And Photoshop is really good at doing most of the work for me. So I let it make the rough selection and then I'm going to go ahead and refine it from here. So there's my selection. It looks really good. You can see the biggest issue is in the hair here. And this is typically where we run into problems. You can do this kind of select subject, but a lot of times you're going to have that really rough edge on hair. And that's what I wanted to talk about. So what I'm going to do is actually, if you go here, you'll see the quick selection tool in the top left. If you go down one, you'll see the refine edge brush tool, which is a hotkey for R. And I'll go ahead and select that. I like to zoom out a bit and stay fairly large with my brush size. So I'm gonna crank this up a bit. 140 seems good. And I'm basically just gonna glide this over the edge. You're gonna see the blue kind of disappear. You're gonna see a lot of these hairs that weren't selected before look a little bit more crisp. So I'm not gonna do this whole image because that would take a while. But this is really if you want to refine your selection and really put some extra time into your challenges, you can kind of be a little bit more precise about it and spend as much time as you want refining it. So this looks pretty decent. I'll probably do this one part of the hair so you can kind of compare and contrast. You can see it's loading a little bit. And I just drag it over those strands, those stray strands that you see here. I'll just wipe it right over there, and it does a pretty good job of recognizing what it's supposed to select. I use this tool all the time. It's so helpful, especially if you're doing any sort of photo manipulation or compositing. I do a lot of painting myself, so I usually don't require precise tools, but I've used this so often for fur and hair and anything that kind of has a sort of soft, fuzzy edge. It's a really amazing tool. And maybe we'll do a little bit of this top part too, just to kind of show you. We'll do about half the hair. And this is going to be pretty rough. This is just kind of a quick example. If you want to refine it, you can always go back and spend as long as you want. But I just wanted to do a single pass over this. You can kind of see that issue with the fuzziness in her sweater as well. Now, if I'm going to make the brush a little bit smaller, but you can kind of see that the fuzzy bits are masked off there. How they're red, so you can tell that that means they're not cut out here. So I'm just going to do a quick pass just right over the edge there. It's loading, and there we go. You can see that now it's masked out. It's a really great tool. I use this all the time. You can even do it here on the neck. Anything that looks like you need the edge to be cleaned up just a bit, it's really great for. All right. So you can see it looks pretty good there. Pretty nice selection. The part on the right, you can see the difference. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. But before I do, I want you to take note on the right panel here. There's some options for smooth, feather, contrast. You can do decontaminate colors here, which can be really useful. But I'm going to try a few different versions of that just so you can see what they do. I'm going to go ahead and press enter. And now what I want to do is make a new layer. We have we don't have any background here. So let's put in a background that's like an obvious color, usually black or white, you can tell. I'm gonna do Control-Shift-N for a new layer. Drag that under our image, and I'm just gonna do like a dark red, because why not? So there we go. So this was our initial layer. I'll just do test 1. That's the rough test with refine edge. You can see this isn't the most appealing looking. It's kind of this whitish tone. It doesn't look super realistic. Obviously it looks much better than this, especially when you zoom out and you look at it from afar. Just at a glance, that edge looks pretty decent, but if we're trying to get it as perfect as we can, let's try another test. So I'm gonna select our layer here. You can see it has the mask cut out. I'm gonna do Control-J to duplicate it, and I'm going to deselect and hide the first layer. That was test 1. I'll do test 2 for this layer. So what I'm gonna do is click the mask, right click, and do select and mask, so we can kind of go back into what we had there. Whoops, I'm trying to zoom in, but it doesn't like that because I have the feather selected. So what I'm gonna try to do is mess around with these options, smooth, feather, and those. Let's try 1 for smooth, maybe 1 for feather. I'm gonna also click Decontaminate Colors. See what happens there. It actually made a new layer for us. So I'll go ahead and delete the test layer 2 and rename this. I think there was an option there that said it's gonna make a new layer. One thing I wanna do to get a better idea of what this looks like is create a background that was similar to the original. It kind of helps me see it a little bit, but I'm gonna do Control-J, duplicate this. I'm gonna click the mask, delete layer mask, and then I'm just gonna select the background, Alt and color pick the background there. Can delete this layer, and really what I wanted to do there was just make a new layer. This helps me kind of see how good it looks sometimes, just to get something closer to the original. Sometimes it's nice to have 2 different backgrounds. You can see how well it reads on a dark and a light background. So what we can do here is kind of see the difference between these two. Now you'll see the first layer, you'll see kind of the flyaway edges, the little strands here. You can kind of get an idea what they look like. They look pretty good on a light background. But you can see they're a lot more defined. I'm gonna zoom in even more on this second one where we used the options on the right. We used feather and smooth. So I'll kind of click between those two. You can kind of see this one's a little bit hard edged. It didn't get all the strands. This one seemed to get them, but they almost seem a bit blurry. So you can kind of mess around with those settings and see how they react. This might be easier to see on a dark background. But you know, we have these really strange kind of artifacty white looking lines here that don't look too good. But if you check out the new selection where we had those options, it does. Now there's some areas here that aren't as clean. I think we didn't spend quite as long refining those. But if you mess around with these tools and these options on the edge, you can kind of see the different results we can get. So the Decontaminate Colors option looks pretty good on our blue background. But as soon as we switch to our dark red background, you can kind of see it's losing some of its definition here. So it's really just a matter of playing with these options and seeing what works best for the image you have. What I'm gonna do one more time is take our initial layer that we did, go ahead and duplicate that with Control-J, select the mask, right click, select and mask. And I'm gonna try, when you zoom in, you can kind of see these options a little bit more prominently. So if we switch the smooth to like 6, for example, you can kind of see that update. But we'll go ahead and do 1 for smooth, maybe we'll do 0.5 for feather. And we'll try decontaminate again, but instead of 100% for the amount, let's try something like 40 to see if we can kind of keep some of those good results, but get rid of a little bit of that lost definition. So we'll do okay. You know, again, all this stuff looks great on the blue background. But if I'm getting kind of really nitpicky with it, we can try the red one. And I think it looks pretty good. We have a lot of those hairs, but what I don't like is this kind of halo-esque result, the lighter colors. So again, if you really play with these options, you can get some really nice results. It kind of depends on the picture, the background you're using and all that. But one thing I might do to clean this up, like I think if we zoom out, the left side looks pretty good. There is a bit of that halo effect, even from here, if I'm really being nitpicky about it. But sometimes what I like to do is just manual cleanup. If you can get really far with the proper selection tools. But what I might do from here is press Ctrl-Shift-N for a new layer. I'll switch the mode to multiply. I use multiply layers all the time. I'm gonna go ahead and name it multiply. Press enter. And I'm gonna use this as a clipping mask. So I'm gonna click on my multiply layer, do create clipping mask. It'll attach it to the image below. And I'm gonna pick kind of this dark purple color, really desaturated. It's a common color I use for my shadows. And I'm just gonna kind of darken down those flyaway hairs. It's just kind of a small touch up that I like to do. You know, none of this is completely necessary, but these are some tools and options and things to think about if you really wanna try to make your images as refined as possible if you're really putting that extra time into it. So you can see these kind of white hairs. It's registering those as pixels. So it's attaching my multiply strokes to anything that's on this layer. So you can kind of be as heavy-handed or delicate as you want. I like to stay somewhat zoomed out so I can still see what the image is kind of supposed to look like. You know, make sure nothing reads from this distance. If there's any strands that are really bugging me, I can get them. I can always go darker if I want to darken things down even further to really make those pop. You know, in the lighter area of the image, there probably won't be so dark. So I would be a little bit careful about going too dark in the area that's getting the most direct light. But that's pretty much it. You know, I think along with the quick selection tool, especially the refine edge tool that does the bulk of the work, you can kind of tweak the settings to be exactly what you want. And then if you get it as good as you can, there's always some manual tweaks that you can do here and there that's going to take it the rest of the way. So you can kind of see the initial result on the right-hand side versus using the refine edge tool and a little bit of manual adjustments. I think it's a huge difference. And especially from this distance where we're zoomed out, it looks really good. You can put that on any other background and have a really nice selection. So hopefully that helps. That's kind of what I wanted to talk about a little bit as far as the refine edge tool goes. I use it all the time for complex selections and it's one of my favorite tools.